Hi guys, welcome to the second episode of Thriving. Today my guest is my bestie, Lisa.
Hello.
Lisa, welcome to the podcast. So let's start with a little introduction. Tell me who you are, where you're from.
So I am currently on my fourth year of a Bachelor of Public Relations program, graduating in April. I am originally from Moscow, Russia, and I moved at 17. I'm currently 20 years old. So I have been living here in Toronto for the past 2.5 years or so.
Here we're talking about what home means to you, where is home, what is home. So tell me, what is home for you?
It's an interesting question. I think it is a very philosophical one too. I think throughout the years, once I have fully established myself, like living here in Toronto, I realized that home is something that you build for yourself for a long time, because I moved out at a pretty young age and I was still like kind of emotionally connected to my parents, even though I wasn't living with them. But every time I would come back to Moscow for the holidays or for the summer break, I would interpret it as going home. So as it was like I am studying here in Toronto and then I'm going home for the break. And then gradually it evolved into this is my home here, and then I'm going to visit my family. I'm going back home to Toronto. And I think this was a very big change for me. The second one of the times where I was flying back to Toronto from visiting my family, the second the plane landed in Toronto was the first time when I didn't feel like the chills, you know? I didn't feel like I was going somewhere abroad, like somewhere to travel. I'm going home.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting insight, and it takes time to kind of get to that feeling and think of the place where you moved into as like your own home. Because I think there are a lot of things and circumstances that kind of affect that feeling, but I think it's so great. I also moved when I was pretty young, I would say, and this is the time where you're not only like growing up, you're still figuring yourself out. And both you and me, we moved across the globe. Maybe we could have chosen something closer, but no, we decided to do it
all the way.
The dramatic change, yeah. But I feel like it also impacts you as a human being and as an individual as well, the way you're growing up, the way you're adulting. And I think it was such a great period of time for me, because I realized what a person I am. I found out new things about me, how I deal with life, how I socialize, how I even approach things in a household. And I also wanted to talk with you about the household thing, because I was doing some research for the podcast, and I found out that a lot of teenagers / young adults, the thing that keeps them closer to home is when they talk to their parents about household thing, about food, how to cook something or how to clean something. And I kind of thought about myself, and I think it's such a big part of me kind of tying myself back to home when I talk to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, so I have this white sweater, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
How do I wash it? What setting on the washing machine? Or like, I want to cook this, how do I do this faster and like more efficient? And I feel this is actually the thing that keeps me closer to home.
I feel like I have a similar thing to what you were saying. I definitely would call my parents from time to time just to ask about share with me your recipe. Like, how do you do this? How do you make this meatball soup? How do you make this? And like go through it with me. Like give me the step-by-step process. So yeah, and then that, I think that makes them also excited that like I am interested in how they're making the meals that they've been making my whole life. Like I'm so used to eating. I also have that with medicine and like anything health related. Like I call my mom the second my stomach hurts or like my head hurts, whatever. Like, yeah, sometimes what do I do? I don't know what's going on. Like you know that we literally just had a conversation with you, me, and my mom.
Yeah. Yeah, the other day I was feeling a little sick, and I didn't ask my mom what to do because I didn't want her to worry that I'm sick, because my sister is also sick. I'm like, okay, she doesn't need another sick kid. No, it's okay, I can figure it out. So I called Lisa, like, do you have this or that? And she's like, wait, she put me on the phone with your mom, and your mom told me to eat soup.
Always eat soup.
And I really wanted to make soup, but I forgot to make soup.
When in doubt, always make soup.
Yeah. So if you don't want to be sick, just eat soup.
Advice from a Russian mother.
Also, while I was talking about the household, I feel it's also interesting after a certain time when you go back home and you kind of used to your little life here. You have, you do something certain way, and even if you took something from your household back at home, like for example, I organize all of my cleaning supplies here, or this is how I organize my fridge. But there are certain things that you do differently in like your daily basis because you found it like it's easier, it works for me. But when you go back home, it feels so weird because they do things differently.
Yeah.
And even though you're like, but I come from this place, we're supposed to have like similar approaches to things, but no, they not only the household, but I feel like the way they just live their life is so different. I know you and me, we talked about coordinating plans.
Yeah.
This is so difficult to coordinate plans because I didn't know. Again, when I was living with my parents, I didn't know I was such a planner, but I thought they were planners too. But here, like, I have everything planned out. It's so hard to get me out the day off. No, it doesn't work. But when I went back home and we went to the country house, and I'm like, when are we going back to the city? I don't know. And I'm like, how am I supposed to make plans? And that, like, it makes me angry, but at the same time, I can't be angry because this is the way they do their stuff. But at the same time, I am angry because why are you doing stuff like this? Have you have similar stories?
Yeah, sometimes when I come back home and you see, again, you get used to the household you're in and the home that you built for yourself and the way you do things, even like really, really small things like, again, how do you do a cleaning? Where do you store the cleaning supplies? How do you clean up after yourself? Where do you store certain things and stuff? And then they do it completely differently. And you come back home. Like, for example, I had this weird feeling when I came back home to Moscow in August, like last August. And my parents have this big, old kettle from like the 70s that they're still boiling their tea in. It looks horrible. It takes so long to actually boil the water because it's a kettle you put on. Is it iron? Wait,
I think it is iron.
Yeah, it's an iron kettle that takes like 10 minutes to boil on the stove. And I would always tell my family, please just buy an electric kettle. Like, what's going on? Like, my family is they're big tea drinkers. And so we always need boiled water in the house. And I came back. I haven't been home in a year and a half. And I come back and I see this ugly ass kettle on the stove. And I turn to my parents. I'm like, you're telling me in almost 2 years you couldn't buy a proper electric kettle? And they're like, but we don't need it. Like, this kettle works just fine because it boils much more water than an electric kettle could ever boil. It stores like 4 liters of water, like for the whole family. And we drink a lot of tea. And yes, it takes 10 minutes to boil. It will take longer to boil several turns of electric kettle. Like, it makes sense for them. And I was so annoyed in the moment because I was like, but why don't you get it? And then at some point they just said, Lisa, if you want an electric kettle, just buy it for yourself. If you want to use it electric, just buy it. And I was like, right. Like, I just kind of need to let it go. I need to fuck off. and like it's their business. It's their electric kettle, not electric kettle.
This is such a weird feeling, like when you kind of dissociate your homes, like this is my home, this is your home, and you're kind of a part of a family. You're kind of, this is your home, but you're also a guest, because you can't say why are we doing this right now, or can we do it differently? Like, you don't have a say anymore, and it's kind of hard for you also, like, as their child, because like you grew up in that house and you feel like, but I do have a say. Like, I do have a say how we do things here, or how we like organize our activities, because the plans for me still make no sense. But I feel like this is the part of the adulting when you're like, okay, this is their home. They need to do it the way they want to do it, and I am just a guest. It is very, very difficult to be a guest in your own house when you're like, but this is my room. No, this is not your room anymore. My sister took the whole room. It was the room for the both of us. Now it's just her room. I didn't have any space there. I came there and I'm like, where do I sleep? Where do I put my clothes? Where do I, how do I live there? And it's very weird, and they never teach you how to deal with that, because this is your home, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like home anymore. Also, when I've been doing the research for the podcast, I actually found out that there is a term for that feeling when home doesn't feel like home anymore. It is psychological homelessness. Mm-hmm. That means we're psychologically homeless. And this is basically a feeling when you go back home to your family house or where you grew up, and it just doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like home anymore. You feel different. You don't know how to be in that space. It looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same. I wanted to ask you as well, have you ever experienced something similar?
Definitely. The war also took a big part of it. I definitely had a big internal conflict inside of me, where I had to learn how to separate the country I am from and what the government is doing. I had to separate the government and the state from my home, from the place where I grew up in. And it was definitely really hard coming back home in August, because I haven't been in Moscow ever since the war started. So it was definitely a completely new reality for me. The way things work because of the sanctions and, the banking cards are all blocked, all of that kind of stuff. But it's also just the overall mood and the overall setting felt so off. It was almost like I'm in some sort of alternative reality.
Simulation.
In a simulation, yes. You see all these propaganda posters and the war in the news, but it's not the news that I'm used to watching. It's the propaganda news. And it's just so odd, because you're just like, what is going on? And I would say I did not have a big culture shock when I came to Toronto, because I was already kind of more inclined to people in North America than people in Russia. However, after the war, it became much more distinguished how much more my mentality has changed. And when I came back home, not only it's the war posters and the news that threw me off, it's more just the feeling of the overall home that just wasn't there anymore. I started perceiving Moscow as a city that I grew up in. And I had great moments there, and I would go around the places where I would go to every day when I was back in high school, and I saw all of my really close best friends there. It was really sweet. I really enjoyed it, but the feeling was more. I would describe the feeling as visiting my home city instead of visiting my home. That was the distinction that I started making really clearly. Just because, you're right. It just it doesn't feel like home anymore. It just doesn't. It's just not there, and it's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. I feel like for us, the war distorted that process in general because you wouldn't feel at home anyway because you still have your life here and like it's hard to live in two separate countries at the same time.
Yeah.
Like you visit your family, you're like, I don't know what's going on in their lives on a daily basis. I have a younger sister. She matured so quickly. I didn't even see that. And it's hard to kind of comprehend in your head that like, yeah, I'm not a part of that like bubble of that part of my life.
Part of their life anymore, of an everyday life.
Because I chose a different life, but at the same time, because of the war, the image definitely got distorted. It looks like the same city, but at the same time, you know, like the sirens, you need to hide, or you're always worried, you're kind of not sure what's going on. The last time I went home, I definitely saw how people changed. Like I would go to a coffee shop, I would almost see them as like they're so tired. They're constantly tired of everything that is going on in the news, of everything that is going on in their country, in their lives, because nobody said that, oh, the war is going on, but your life, they're going to be great. Your job is going to be great. Your friends is going to be great. No, like they're experiencing it in everything, and it definitely is not the same. When you look at the city where you grew up and it's not the same city, but you really want it to be the same, but there is honestly nothing you can do to change it. So it's really important to approach those visits home as like you're taking your little Lisa, or you're taking your little Anna to the trip. You're taking her to see home, to visit a place where she grew up in. I really like the way you're thinking about home as something more than just a physical place. How are you dealing with that feeling of home isn't home anymore?
I wouldn't say that I deal with that feeling consistently because it's something reoccurring. It's just something that happened when I went back home. You kind of just grieve and learn how to build the new home for yourself. And while you do that, you still pick up on the things that remind you of your home, like your childhood home. You pick up maybe some household things, maybe some cultural quirks that is normal for you because you're from a different culture and now you bring it here. Like, for example, like I have an enormous amount of teas, which is not normal usually for Canadians, and my roommate thinks I'm sick. I have so many teas, but that's because I grew up in a very tea-loving household. Same with the big medicine cabinet where you can find literally cure for any disease just because of how big it is. Like I have medicine for anything. You kind of implement these little things in your household that remind you of home. I have my pictures hung on the wall with my family, which is really nice. I have a playlist on Spotify that's called POV, My Dad is Dropping Us Off. It's public on Spotify, you can search it up. Where I put all of the songs that my dad has been listening to for the past 20 years. His music, it says, has not changed in 20 years. And it's all like 80s, 90s rock, and it's just so comforting for me. Like sometimes I would just want to listen. I would want to imagine that it's 7 p.m. in Moscow and my dad is picking me up from some like dance practice, and we're going home and he put on that music. It's a very nice feeling. So I would say surround yourself with things that remind you of home. It can be people. It can be people from your culture, like you. Like it can be maybe cafes and restaurants, like of your local. If you live in a diverse city, like for example Toronto is very diverse, just go to local restaurants that make your cuisine. go to Ukrainian restaurants, to Russian restaurants, just have something. Again, food is like a big part of cultural connection.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with things that remind you of home and implement that in your household, and it would definitely not only will make you feel better, it will also make your home very authentic and very for you.
Yeah,
you know?
It is very essential to keep it in balance, to have something from back home that kind of gives you that little comfort when you need it, but at the same time not limit yourself to only things and people that remind you of home. It's important to also talk to other people from other cultures and kind of not limit yourself, and you'll be thriving.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you so much for being with me here in my second episode.
Thank you for
and
inviting.
Thank you for talking to me. I'll see you in the next episodes. Bye!